What is going on, everyone? Griffin here, coming at you with some chalk gameplay, and today we're going to be talking about the weapon changes in the Winter Warfare update for Rogue Company. So let's head over and let's talk about it. So as you can see here, these are the weapon changes for the Winter Warfare update for Rogue Company. We're going to run through these, then we're going to head back up and we were going to talk about them. So for the Hydra, the rate of fire is actually increasing from 273 RPM up to 286 RPM. The Nightshade, its accuracy loss per shot is being decreased from 0.02 to 0.01. The Objection is receiving a headshot damage increase from 14 to 16. The Sahara is receiving a hipfire accuracy increase. The Riptide is having a increased max accuracy loss to the weapon, and also the accuracy returns faster after finishing firing. And for the Conviction, the fall-off ranges are changing for this weapon, so the base distance is changing from 20 meters down to 15 meters. So these are some very interesting changes. I think some of these are warranted, some of these are unnecessary, and some of these should never have happened to begin with. And we'll start with the Hydra, a change that I think was actually warranted. The Hydra, I don't know in what dimension and what world the Hydra is one of the most picked, played, and ran weapons in this game, but I want to be a part of that. After they did that huge Hydra nerf that they did back in the day with loosening that hipfire up for it, it doesn't seem to be very reliable, especially in hipfire situations, but they are continuing to mess with it. So they're giving it an actual buff here, and it's increasing the RPMs by 10. And I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot. We'll have to get in there and tinker with it and see, but the Hydra was a weapon that you just could not run up against anything in Rogue Company since they lowered the RPM on the weapon, in my opinion. You couldn't fight DMRs with it because DMRs shot faster than it and hit harder than it. You couldn't win gunfights against ARs because ARs hit just as hard and fired a lot faster than it did in comparison. SMGs, of course, beat it out every time unless they are all the way across the map for whatever reason someone will be using them that way. Shotguns, of course, beat it, and pretty much every piece of utility puts you in a position to where if you had the Hydra, you were just better off dead than you were actually running the weapon. So I think that this was a warranted change. I think that, you know, making changes to the fire rate of the weapon itself was probably not the best decision that the developers could go with to begin with this weapon. They should have done a full deep dive on why the weapon is so popular to begin with, especially when everybody else was just completely dumbfounded by the fact that, like, why are they saying that this weapon is ran and used as much? There needs to be some type of a reasoning behind it. So I don't know. There's other things that they could do with the Hydra if it's that much of a problem, which I never felt that it was that much of a problem, in my opinion, especially since that major nerf that they did to it way back in the day. So we'll see where this lands. Hopefully this will make it a more viable weapon. I kind of don't feel like it will, just adjusting the RPM up by 10, but we'll see how this shakes out in the long run. For the Nightshade, the accuracy loss per shot decreased from 0.02 to 0.01, so they're basically cutting the accuracy loss per shot in half. And I ran the Nightshade the other night, and I had no issues with the weapon whatsoever. I could do really well with it against SMGs. I could do really well with it against ARs. DMRs is a different story, but I knew the type of weapon that the Nightshade was. I knew what it was supposed to be and the ranges that it was supposed to be ran in, and I had no issues with it whatsoever. So this is kind of a weird change. I'm very interested to see how this shakes out in the overall meta of the game. It could make it very OP against SMGs. It could make it very OP against ARs. I mean, when you look at the statistics of the Nightshade versus the LMPX, they're almost identical. There's a couple of range changes and a couple of bullet damage changes that vary between the two, but not significantly enough. I mean, they're almost carbon copies of one another. With the LMPX, you have to upgrade it all the way to be pinpoint accurate, whereas the Nightshade was pretty accurate for the most part whenever you had it at just the base level. So this could actually put it over the top and make it the SMG to be running, and it's not even an SMG. So we'll see how it shakes out. Speaking of SMG, a nerf that never needed to happen, in my opinion, is the Objection getting another buff. There was no reason at least in my estimation, why the Objection needed a range buff before Jared's untimely exit from the development team of Rogue Company, yet we got one. And now we are getting another buff with the headshot damage being increased from 14 to 16. The Objection is top 2 SMGs in the game right now, and it will continue to be top 2, possibly number 1 whenever this headshot machine gets out there. Now, I know it's not the be-all, end-all SMG in the game. I know that there's not a lot of flexibility with the Objection, but whenever you pair the Objection with other perks in the game and you give it that explosive ability that it has, then it's going to quickly go back into that Objection meta, which I know that we all missed oh so much. I don't think that this is a good change. I think that this is something that probably, in my opinion, should have never happened to begin with. But, of course, we've got the Objection back, so what can we say? It was top 2. Now it might be a solid contender for the number 1 spot, in my opinion. For the Sahara, they're increasing the hipfire accuracy. So one of the most accurate hipfire weapons in Rogue Company is getting an increase to its hipfire accuracy, which is very interesting considering that the assault rifles were all adjusted back in, a couple months ago to make the hipfire on them worse, make the hip fire on the SMGs better, because the SMGs were supposed to be a little bit more hip fire. It's weird that they're kind of starting to roll back on some of those initial changes that we got to the assault rifles whenever they were messing with the SMGs in the game. Whenever that big SMG change happened and everybody was freaking out because they didn't know how to play the game. But anyway, we're getting a Sahara change, and this will probably put the Sahara at number 2, number 1 AR in Rogue Company. I don't know if it'll squeak past the HRM or the KA-30, but it will be a contender for top 3, if not top 2, maybe number 1. I mean, it was already a deadly weapon at range. It was already pumping out a ton of damage. If we're going to tighten that hip fire up, then this is just going to be the weapon to go to. If it has better hip fire than the KA-30, then I can see a lot of people start gravitating towards the Sahara over the KA-30. A weapon that needed to be nerfed forever ago is the Riptide, and I'm glad to see that they are actually adjusting the weapon. There's a couple of good things, a couple of bad things, so they increased the max accuracy loss of the weapon, which is something that needed to happen for a very long time, but the accuracy returns faster after finishing firing. So I'm assuming that the Riptide is going to be used as more of a burst fire weapon. You're going to be able to get probably 5 or 6 shots before that accuracy loss starts to affect you fully. You're going to have to stop firing, which if you're hitting headshots and you're being consistent with your shots, this isn't going to affect you whatsoever. But if you're not hitting consistent headshots, or you're firing at someone that's got some crazy movement, then this is going to impact your gameplay in some capacity, especially if you're someone that ran the Riptide tried and true. So we'll see how this shakes out. The Riptide was that weapon that needed to be nerfed. It's like the D3DI or the Mamba, or insert any of the other OP weapons that the developers just seem to gloss over every single update. It was something that needed to be nerfed so much that I honestly learned how to deal with it, which is crazy. Like, I learned how to deal with it and how to play around it and how to outplay the Riptide, much like I have the Mamba and the D3DI. And it's bad whenever your game is in a state where instead of making balance changes that are warranted and that needs to happen, the player base is forced to figure out ways to actually play around that stuff. So it's good to see that the Riptide's getting a change, but at the same time, it's too little too late in my opinion. Conviction. The fall off range for the base weapon is being reduced from 20 meters down to 15 meters. And there is an upgrade path for the weapon that actually increases the range, I think at the legendary level. So, first of all, is this fall off range going to affect that legendary? Is it going to scale appropriately? Or whenever you max it out to that legendary, is it just going to put it back in full effect the way that it was before? We'll see how that shakes out. The Conviction's range was never the issue with the Conviction. The problem with the Conviction was the fact that whenever you upgraded the weapon, after you fired 3 bullets, especially when you were ADSing, it was pinpoint accurate. That was the problem with the Conviction. Unfortunately, they decided to adjust the range of it, because in Rogue Company over at Evil Mojo, if something's overperforming, let's screw with the ranges of everything before we actually address the real issues with those weapons. Now, I do agree that a lot of the SMGs and some of the other weapons need their ranges adjusted to be appropriate to what those weapons are. But for the Conviction, was the range the problem? Absolutely not. The problem was the accuracy of the weapon, and that's what should have been addressed in my opinion. Let's compare the Conviction versus the Maul. They decided that instead of the Maul being a pinpoint accurate SMG that you can run around the map with 100 bullets in the box fed magazine, they decided to go in there and give it the same property that the Conviction has, where the longer that you fire it, the more that spread tightens up, and it'll finally get to a point to where it is pinpoint accurate. With the Conviction, you shot 5 bullets before the upgrade and bam, you were good. Everything was gravy. Whenever you get the upgrade, it's like 3 shots. Bam. With the Maul, you're shooting a third of that box-fed magazine. A third of it to get it pinpoint accurate. That's even with upgrading the weapon. So you're having to dump way more ammunition with the Maul itself to get it to that pinpoint accurate state. That's why the Conviction beats the Maul in every way, shape, or form when it comes to LMGs. That's what they should have done to the Conviction. They should have made it appropriately on scale based on the rate of fire and the damage output to the Maul. So maybe it doesn't take 3 bullets to make it pinpoint accurate. Maybe it takes 7 bullets to make it pinpoint accurate. Maybe the default is 10 bullets whenever you're ADSing it, and then whenever you upgrade it, then it takes 7 bullets or it takes 5 bullets. That's the issue with the Conviction. It's not the range of the weapon. It has nothing to do with the range. It has everything to do with the accuracy of the weapon. And that's what needed to change with it. So here we are with more questionable changes to weapons, more questionable changes to a lot of things in this update, and it's getting to the point now where it's almost comical the fact that there's weapons that really need to be adjusted, really need to be changed, and really need to be brought in line with their counterparts, whereas we're getting changes that aren't warranted. We're getting these weapon changes as opposed to weapon changes that we actually needed. So what would you have liked to have seen change? Be sure to let me know in the comments. Also be sure to check that description for links to Facebook, Discord, and Twitter. Those are the places to contact me. If you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, then consider hitting that join button to become one of the 256 crew members. Lastly, on Thursdays and also on Sundays, I will be streaming here on YouTube. So if you are interested and available, please feel free to stop by and say hello there. Thanks for watching, guys.
That was literally my first game back.
Man, I just want my shit to register. Like, what the fuck? Why am I keep getting one shot, miss a shot, hit a shot, miss a shot? It is so fucking stupid. Like, why that keep happening? It keeps happening. All right. Sorry, Griffin.
No, you're
like
fine.
All up in your.
You're fine. No worries.